Hey everybody, this is the Drunk Werewolf, and we are going to be reacting to Dave Ramsey spout some BS about young men, and let's get into this reaction. I'm probably going to get really triggered at this.
So, Ken, I was listening to our friend Mike Rowe's podcast the other day, and he had an author on, Nick Eberstadt or Eberstadt. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I should have listened to Mike pronounce it, because with his wonderful pipes, it was a great job
right.
of pronouncing it, right?
Yeah.
But Mike has been sounding the same alarm that you and I have been sounding, particularly you, that we have what you were saying at the break is a social crisis evolving, and it's showing up in the unemployment numbers when we properly measure them. Now, this economist is a mathematician that did this book, How Things Work. I guess that's Mike's podcast. I don't see the name of his book off the top of my head. Somebody handed it to me the other day at an event I was at.
I believe it's Minute Work, if I'm not mistaken, something along those lines.
The essence of their discussion that you and I have been having a similar discussion is this shift in the workplace right now, that we've got a large number of jobs available and no one applying for them. There's a shortage of labor for the first time in post-World War II America. We've never seen this in modern America. And the reason there's a shortage is not because the jobs are so plentiful. It's because there are, according to this article from Fox News, quoting Mike Rowe and quoting this economist, there are now 7 million able-bodied males between 25 and 40 years old that are able to work and are not even looking for work.
Yeah.
Why would they look for work? I mean, what's the point of working if you're not going to get a house? Because if you're only making minimum wage, you can't afford a house in today's day and age unless you go super minimalist and work as many hours as possible. And maybe in 5 years, if you've saved up basically every penny, which is very unrealistic. Women, you can't get a woman unless you're just about 100K, 6 foot, packing, and have abs, basically, are very built from the gym. There are plenty of young men who are not a part of that unemployment statistic that don't get any attention from women. And average women don't want average men anymore. And if men don't have the drive to work so they can create a family, what's the point? And especially because the women aren't worth it. There's no virgins out here or anything like that. And they're definitely overweight and single moms and unattractive and masculine. So why would a man work hard to what? Help pay your paychecks, Dave Ramsey? And secure your retirement and boomers' retirement? After the boomers have spent the last 50 years screwing up this whole thing? It's ridiculous. They screwed up this whole thing and they expect us to just be good little soldiers, even though our 40 hours a week is going to do nothing and this economy is complete crap. And they want us to pay the taxes of the single mothers and the older retired people for a country that hates us, especially if you're a white man. If you're a white man, everybody hates you, and this country hates you, and they tell you that every single day, basically. So it's understandable why a young man would want to just chill out at home, work part-time or not work, and maybe get food stamps or something, and do the bare minimum. Because what's the point of being independent? because men do things for women, and since they don't have a chance to get women unless you're in that top 10%, there's no point. Might as well just enjoy yourself instead of making yourself miserable. Let's continue.
It's correct, and it's staggering. And so the point here is that what's going on? This is causing massive economic problems. Before we look at the social, very quick glance here. When you have a gap in the jobs like we've had now for the last 2 years, then you've got real small businesses being hurt by this. Think about the restaurants in your small town. They can't find people to work, and it's affecting their livelihood. Then the other economic factor is, of course, we still see a war for talent. And so wages have gone up tremendously in the last 2 years, which has now led to a stubborn inflationary period that we are in. Now, that's the economic piece. The social piece, what's crazy about this is,
no, they raise these wages and the minimum wage because people are stupid and they think, oh, well, minimum wage, I can barely afford my bills. We should naturally raise the minimum wage, which people don't understand because a lot of people are stupid, that if you raise minimum wage, everything else is going to rise.
Is that you've got 6.8 million people that last month, according to the latest jobs report and the Census Bureau, 100 million Americans weren't working last month. Now, half of them
100 million. That's
100
not right.
100 million, but half
were working.
No,
let him finish.
We don't have
Dave.
100 million unemployed.
Jesus Christ!
There's only 300 million in the whole state.
Didn't say they were unemployed. I'm saying just not working. Period. I'm just breaking the numbers down for you.
Oh yeah, like toddlers.
Half are retired.
Okay.
Right. Another 12% are dealing with some type of long-term illness, or disability. Okay. And then 5.6 million people saying, I don't want to go back to work because they're scared of COVID. And then the number is right at 7 million that are saying, I don't want to work. And those are the men. So the social factor that's going on here is you've got two factors. One, you've had decades and decades of entitlements. Starts with welfare. And then if you look at during COVID, where people were getting payments every week, every month, all right, so that's an entitlement where they're disincentivized to actually go back to work. And then, Dave, I think the fact that for decades we've literally taken the pain away from our kids. We've removed the struggle. And I don't say this with jest, but I think when you look at things like everybody gets a trophy for participation, and
no, everybody doesn't get a trophy for participation. Maybe the women do because they get told they're gorgeous and beautiful and everything. And maybe the men have different problems nowadays growing up, but they definitely have it hard. Whereas the men of yesteryear, they had struggles about like livelihood and stuff.
Nobody learned.
But at least they knew that they had a chance of getting a woman. We offer a different kind of struggle nowadays where the average man can't get a woman and he gets no attention growing up with women. They basically ignore him if he's the average guy and not a top 10%er. So he doesn't think he can get them. He doesn't know how to act around women. And I wouldn't say that's entitled. The fact that men are starved of validation and attacked just for being men, especially if they're white men. So that's not... Sure, it's easier than it used to be. And we have a cushy society. And that keeps going as time goes on. Times tend to get easier until they turn into weak men, and then it will cycle back again and it'll get hard times again. But the fact is, you can't say these men are just wimps and everything. Sure, some of them are. The ones that are becoming girls, but for the most part, it's like we are creatures of habit and we do what is easy. Especially if the incentive is not there because there is no incentive for working. It has nothing to do with being extremely entitled because you can't live off of welfare if you're a guy because you don't get any money from the state.
Learns the sting of failure. Nobody learns the sting of rejection. And so what happens is a good amount of the 7 million men, not all of them, are in this conversation that Mike had with this economist, are looking at screens based on the data. They say how much time they spend on screens. They get dopamine hits.
2,000 hours a year.
2,000 hours a year.
Yeah, they retreat to their own space because in reality, they're attacked for being men. They're told that their opinions are always wrong. And their society attacks them on the regular. And they don't get any good validation, so they don't have any self-worth feelings. And then they will just play video games because it's like, well, society hates me and everybody hates me. Why should I contribute to the society? On the opposite end, women, they get all sorts of pushed up by society.
7 million men, 25 to 54, are spending 2,000 hours a year on screen.
So self-medicating because they're scared to leave the cave, using your old analogy.
Not cave, it's mother's basement.
Right. But the idea is they're afraid to put themselves out there. And here's what we know about work. So when someone succeeds in work, their self-esteem goes up. 2, they have financial independence or the opportunity for financial freedom. And then 3, they're a part of something bigger than themselves. It's a sense of belonging.
Dr. John Deloney would tell you.
You don't get a sense of belonging from work. You get it from finding friends and hanging out with them, which could also be done doing video games and finding friends that way. And you don't get financial freedom by working nowadays. That's just not true. Just because you work hard and you're the hardest worker does not mean that you have financial freedom. And that's just the truth. Because someone could put in 60 hours a week nowadays and they can still be on the bottom. Depends on how minimalist they live, because that's what you need to do nowadays. You need to be a minimalist to be able to live a comfortable life. If you're the average man, because you're not getting it unless you went to college and got this really good job that pays really good. But that's not the average American.
Your mental health goes up because your dignity, your autonomy,
that's it.
Your ability to control your environment goes up. There is such a mental illness tie-in.
No question.
Caused by not working.
That's right.
Literally.
I'll tell you, it's not a mental illness by not working, because I know a lot of people that don't work that much, but they make a lot of money. They're perfectly fine. It doesn't matter. It's not that mental illness is caused by not working. And like I said, there's no incentive, Dave Ramsey. I get why you are telling men to get to work, because your retirement and everything and people your age relies on it, and women rely on men basically being slave trade into the system so they can pay for single mothers and mothers who don't want to work. And that's the only benefit. There's lots of benefits to men in this society, but that's the only one that people feel like they need men for, because women don't feel like they need men. And they'll act that way.
Literally. So this idea that you have not put gravel in the stomach of your kids, they have no grit, means as a parent you suck. And so you mommies need to throw your 25-year-old out of your basement yesterday and put him on the street and teach him to work. You're late to the party, but you need to do this. You are doing him a disservice. You are doing America.
It's not about mommy not being hard on them or anything like that. Although that could be, because there's lots of single mothers. It's the majority of the parents in America. And usually they kick the dad out of the home, and then the son is not as strong and strong-willed. So it would make sense if that was the case. But nothing's going to be done by throwing them out to the cold, hard world. It's just going to create more problems for that guy.
A disservice. You are doing your neighbors a disservice. You're doing the mental health community a disservice.
Who cares about the mental health service or the neighbors? They don't care about that woman's son. The world doesn't care about that woman's son because the world and the country does not care about men. This is just all about this using relationship. They want men to get back into the workforce so everybody can use men and their hard work for a country that hates them, that wants to use them, while they get nothing out of it.
You're risking his increased likelihood of depression, anxiety, and suicide.
That's exactly right.
You are doing all of these things because you're letting Junior play Call of Duty 2,000 hours a year in your basement, and he ain't ever been called to any duty.
Yeah. And the irony is you're doing all of that under the guise of helping your kid feel good about themselves, and the very thing that they need to feel good about themselves is to go out and do good.
Yeah. It's the wussification of America.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a bunch of wussies.
Yeah.
Is what it amounts to. And
Again, Dave Ramsey, it's not about being a wussy or a pussy or anything like that. It's about the fact that there's no incentive. In yesteryear, back when you were probably a teenager and a young adult, you had a purpose because you could go to work and you could get an average woman and you could get laid and get some of that puniti. And that is a shout out to Undead Chronic. Because that's what he came up with that. And the fact is that now that men aren't getting that, what's the point? Men do things for women, or the ability to get women, or to create a family, because they want a wife and they want kids, so they get a wife and risk the court system. But the court system is horrible, and you know the women are going to leave. They're going to stay with you for 5 years, then they'll leave, take your kids, and you'll be a slave to the system the rest of your life and not be able to see your kid. So what's the point? What's the incentive, Dave?
And, seriously, a good cowboy boot in the butt of this whole thing would be helpful. It really, really would. It just pisses me off. I mean, this is just a thing where you just need to work. Oh, my God.
Just work 40 hours a week so then I can get my little paycheck and I can keep up my Social Security when I choose to retire. Or the people my age can get the money so the system doesn't collapse. Just use us a little more. Just work. Just work. I know you aren't going to get anything from it. You're not going to get, financial security, which he will never say that. And I know my generation screwed everything up so that you're basically working for nothing but minimum wage. And that there's no middle class. But just work. Just do it. Be the good little slave. Good boy, good boy. Be a little slave.
7 million, and they call them men in this article. I'll call them males. All right? Males, 25 to 40, 7 million of them literally sitting on their butts. And someone else is caring for them. The government?
Yes, someone else is caring for them. And, okay, boomer simp boy, Mr. Feminist, who wants to always put the blame on men. You don't care about men. You just care about lining your pockets.
Their mommy, their live-in girlfriend,
they're not getting a live-in girlfriend because the average guy can't do that because women want a guy who has money and looks and height and looks good and has a good package and all of this stuff. It pisses me off when old boomer boys want to get mad at young men for not wanting to play a rigged game.
thinks he's cute.
Here's the breakdown.
Got a sugar mama, do you, buddy?
Yeah. Here's some of the census data, Dave, from a Bloomberg article. The equivalent of 32 million people who aren't working are relying on savings. That includes retirement. Okay. Another 26 million are using credit cards or loans, and 12 million have been borrowing
the
from
credit card
families.
is the devil. It's at the center of the problem.
There it is. And then here's the part we've been talking about. 12 million have said that they're borrowing from family or friends to help keep them out of the workforce.
Yeah.
They're living off
family
of
and
other
friends.
people. Gotta
You're
cut
not.
them off.
You're enablers.
Yeah.
You're giving a drunk a drink. You're
it.
giving a lazy person the ability to still be lazy. You're giving someone who's in avoidance mode because they're afraid, they're scared, they're paralyzed by the facing reality and stepping into the real world, when the best thing that can happen to you, the most alive you'll ever feel, is when you risk it and you step up to the plate and the ball comes whizzing across and scares the piss out of you while you swing the bat. This is the best thing that can happen to you.
That's right.
And you strike out.
Right.
And it's okay.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't work out. Oh, darn.
Well, I think the simplest way to look at what Dave is saying is, remember all of us when we rode a bike the first time, we were terrified, horrified maybe.
I'm terrified right now.
Yeah. But what happened? Like, we took that fear, we stepped into it, we learned to ride the bike, and it wasn't much longer before we were saying, look, Mom, no hands.
The difference between that is when you're riding a bike, you get a reward of knowing how to ride a bike. What's the reward? Incentives. I'm going to nail this home and home again. Incentives, incentives, incentives. There's not much incentives for those men to go to work, especially if they're the average guy.
We go from terrified to get on the bike to, look, Mom, no hands. And that's the human spirit. The idea of these kids, these men, I shouldn't say kids, but some of them are emotionally kids.
Yeah.
They need to feel alive, and the way you feel alive is by making a contribution for yourself and for others. That's simple.
You don't feel alive where there's no risk.
Well, that's exactly right.
And the coddling of the American male, the wussification of this culture, it is really starting to be a social problem.
And now an
It
economic.
started out as a parenting problem. It started out as this. And hey, man, I don't know. No. I'm just going to blame you, moms and dads.
Well, I would say the friends and the parents are absolutely culpable. And I would say this.
I can blame Call of Duty if you want, but moms and dads that are good moms and dads rip that crap out of the wall and say, get your butt out and mow the grass.
How do you blame the moms and dads? No, not the dads, just the moms, because the moms kicks the dads out of the home, and then they have this problem because the dads teach the men to be able to stand up to adversity and say, life sucks, you gotta work through it. Because nothing's gonna happen when you're sitting on your ass and no one in the world cares about you. You're not a woman. They don't automatically care about you. You have to make yourself good enough where people care about you, because people automatically will not care about you in real life. Very few. There are very few people that actually care about men and men's issues and want to help men. I like to think I'm one of them. No Undead Chronic is. No Hammerhand is. Guys like that. But this is ridiculous. Give incentives so men have a reason to go to work and work hard for their money. This Dave guy just pisses me off. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe. And This has been The Drunk Werewolf, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.